In order for me to prepare for this class, first thing I have to do is I have to read the section that we're going to be studying next week, and I have to read it about 3 or 4 times so that I can come up with an outline to put down for question number 1 on that text. Then I have to go back through that text, and I have to make up questions for you and type those so that you'll have your questions. Well, that's only the start of it. Then I have to go back and actually do the homework that I gave you last week, okay? And I have to type it and make certain that it can get it all ready to be posted on the website. So it's a lot of work to do one class, but it is well worth it because it is a interesting study. And every time I finally get through that last question, I say, man, this sure is good, okay? And it's been an interesting study. And hopefully we can continue maybe into 2 Samuel. The books of 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, 2 Kings, they're all chronologically in order. So if you start those books, you just need to kind of continue through them so that you can get the gist of Hebrew history during that particular point in time. We're studying the kings, the United Kingdom, and then into the divided kingdom, and it gets pretty detailed in that divided kingdom. This stuff we're studying now is easy stuff. Okay, it gets a little bit harder when you get into the kingdoms and the kings and things of that nature. But I do have you outline the section. So does anybody have an outline of 1 Samuel 16, 1 through 13? Anybody? All right, there's Jane.
First, I want to say, as a retired teacher, I appreciate all the work you do to prepare a lesson.
Well, thank you. It is. It's a kicker sometimes.
Okay, verse 1 through 3, Samuel sent to Jesse. Verse 4, 5, Samuel set sacrifice. Verse 6, 10, 7 sons passed. Verse 11 to 13, David, the youngest, anointed.
Very good. 7 sons pass. When she said that, it reminded me of something that happened to my mother. They didn't die. Okay, 7 sons pass. My mother used to work at a glass company. And she was the bookkeeper there, and she did accounts receivable. So she'd oftentimes have to call trying to collect money from different individuals. So she calls this one individual, and she asks him, she says, Mr. So-and-so hasn't paid his bill, and we're trying to get him to send in the money. And the lady on the other end of the phone, she says, well, Miss Hazel, he just passed. My mother didn't take it as he just died. She said, he just passed the house, where's he going? Oh man, unbelievable. Then that woman had to explain to her. My mother really felt bad, but 7 sons passed. They didn't die. They passed by Samuel, but that's a good outline. Here's the one that I've got very briefly. A new king to be anointed, verses 1 through 3. An old prophet causes anxiety, verses 4 and 5. Several sons are absolved, verses 6 through 10. And a shepherd boy is anointed, verses 11 through 13. So that's my outline. Very simple, very easy. Let's go on to question 2. And the Lord said unto Samuel, how long wilt thou blank for Saul, seeing I have rejected him from reigning over Israel? Yes. How long wilt thou mourn for Saul? Does Saul seem extremely upset at the disobedience and the rejection of Saul? Does Samuel seem upset? Disappointed? Okay, notice what the Lord said. How long wilt thou what? Mourn for Saul. He's upset. I guess my question that I ask is, sometimes we can just get the answer and run by it. The question that I would ask is this, why is he so upset at Samuel being rejected as the king? Huh? As Saul being rejected. The Bible says Samuel's in mourning. God even asked him, how long are you going to keep this up? Why is he so upset? Absolutely. I think there was a very, very close connection between Samuel and Saul. Samuel had seen Saul grow up practically. Okay, especially as the king. He was the one who anointed them. Oftentimes went to battle with him, didn't he? He was the one who transferred the mantle of power from him to the king, did he not? And so there was this close connection, this kind of mentor relationship there. And now all of a sudden, this first king of Israel, the one that I have put so much time and effort in, has been rejected by God. It would upset anybody, would it not? Somebody you love and care for is rejected. You would be upset by that. What else might have saddened him? Anything? Just the relationship, Jim? Okay, he's definitely going to come to understand that in this text for certain, is he not? He still kind of has that attitude, though. Okay, that this outward display is so important. He's going to learn that that's not the case, especially in this chapter. Guys, let me ask you something. When there is a change of power anywhere, is that a scary time in the life of a nation, a church, a business, any time? Yeah, that is a very scary time. And so all of a sudden, here's the first king, and he spent all these years, developing his kingdom, establishing his rule and his reign, and all of a sudden now God rejects him, and the question is going to be what? Who's the next king, right? And is the kingdom okay? Was Samuel a person who was concerned about the kingdom? Sure. Why was he so concerned? Yeah, he occupied several positions in Israel, did he not? He was a prophet, wasn't he? He was a priest. And at one point, before he turned the reins over to Saul, he was a judge, wasn't he? Guys, this was a man who had full, complete charge of the nation of Israel at one point, and he's turned those reins over to another. Now that man is rejected, and surely that would cause Samuel to be quite upset at the disposition of this new king. So there's a lot of reasons why he may have been mourning and weeping over his rejection. Oh yes, he was he was pretty ferocious as a leader, was he not? And
I felt also that maybe knowing that he's going to start all over again. That's something that you might not think about when he's mourning, but in a way, you've got to think about what's coming ahead and who's going to be it and what he's going to have to put into it.
right. I believe that's true. You know, it's going to be some work, isn't it? It's interesting, though. Notice that some time had passed because God asked the question, how long wilt thou mourn? How long? This has gone on for several days, maybe several weeks now. We don't know exactly the time frame that he mourned. And he asked him, how long are you going to do that? And what's interesting is he's so deep in mourning that even he, as a prophet, has not yet done what? What has he not done? He's so deep in his own mourning and his own grief over the situation that he hasn't done something. What has he not done? No? Yes. He has not sought God's will in this matter. Okay? He's not gone to God and said, okay, God, you've rejected this first king. Now, what do you want me to do? Who's going to be the next king? He hasn't asked God one time. All he's done is what? Mourn. Folks, let me tell you something. Can mourning disrupt your life? Folks, it can even disrupt your spirituality, can it not? And your closeness to God. And there are a lot of individuals who allow mourning to do that. And I think we see a man in deep grief over this particular situation. What is God's attitude towards Saul? Oh, he still loved him. Well, I mean, it's like we said right at the end of the lesson. Okay? God's love is designed to do what? Cause me to do certain things, right? Okay? Trust God, praise God, obey God. Okay? And Saul had turned from that, hadn't he? He took matters into his own hands, disobeyed the will of God, and when that happens, then God no longer can what? He can no longer approve of me. He can no longer accept me. Okay? Even though He can love me, okay, and He still loves Saul, but guess what? He can't accept him anymore. And the time had come in God's mind that I need a new what? That I need a new king. I've got to have a new standard in Israel. If this keeps up, is it going to get bad in Israel? Yeah, because you see, if the leadership can rebel against God, then guess what? Anybody can, can't they? You know, if it's okay for him, then it ought to be okay for me. Sadly, we see that even in our nation today, don't we? Our leaders get away with everything. Things that we think what? We would never get away with that. And yet they do. And so it puts a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths and disrupts the nation, doesn't it? And so he just couldn't accept him. I put down here, grief is natural, but prolonged grief is a very serious matter, and it can be dangerous, folks. Okay? Can be dangerous. To move beyond grief should be the goal of all who suffer loss. And this involves connecting to life here again. Okay? Saul's gone, right? As far as God's concerned, now he's still going to be ruling and reigning until his death, but as far as God's concerned, that's not my king anymore. That's not the one I desire and I long for. So now, where does Samuel's mind need to go? Does it just need to stay in the grief? Oh no. He's got to get out of the grief, and he's got to look forward to what? To the future. There's still things that have to be done. There's still a life that has to be lived, and that's not always easy to do. What was Samuel instructed to fill with oil? Yes, a horn. Okay. I've got a picture of it. If you go to the website, you'll see a horn. They would use a ram's horn or other things and fill that up, put a stopper in the top of it, put a rope or put leather around it and carry it to various places in order to do the anointing. To whom was Samuel instructed to go? Yes. And go. I will send thee to Jesse the Bethlehemite. What do we know about Bethlehem? Anybody do a little research on Bethlehem? Jesus would be born in Bethlehem. Okay. Does anybody know what the word means? Bethlehem. The word Beth always means what? House of something. Okay. So Bethel, house of God. Bethlehem, house of bread. House of bread. It was about 5 to 6 miles south of Jerusalem. Okay? 5 or 6 miles south of Jerusalem. And folks, it would eventually be referred to as the city of David. In fact, David would have 2 cities named after him. What was the other? Jerusalem. Both of them will be called the city of David. Very interesting city. A little bitty place, not a big place. Jesse. Who in the world is Jesse? Go to the house of Jesse. He's not that important, is he? Anybody know who he is? Okay, he's David's father. Okay. He's what? Okay, he's going to be of the lineage of Jesus. But watch this, folks. He was the son of Obed, the grandson of Ruth and Boaz. See, sometimes our minds don't go back very far, do they? Okay, he's a grandson of Ruth and Boaz. Was that an interesting relationship? It was, wasn't it? It was one of those kinsman-redeemer relationships, wasn't it? And very, very interesting relationship. He had 8 sons, 2 daughters. Jesse did. Okay? His name will eventually become very important in prophecy. 2 times in Scripture you will hear of the Messiah being of the root of Jesse. Okay? Sometimes somebody like David seems to overshadow their father, doesn't it? But for some reason in this case, God sees Jesse as being almost as important as who? As David. The root of Jesse, not the root of David. So his father, in the mind of God, was going to occupy a very important position in the lineage of Jesus Christ. Why was Samuel so scared, though? Well, I've skipped number 5, didn't I? Why did he want him to go to Jesse's house? Yeah, to provide me a king, right? And so now, when he was asked to go, he was scared. So why was he scared? Yes. And Samuel said, how can I go? If Saul hear it, he will kill me. Wow. Was that a real possibility? Why do we say that? You know, we're quick on the yeah. Why? I thought these two men were close. You know, Saul was mourning for this man. And yet now he's scared to death of him, scared that he's going to kill him. And if I ask you, is that a real possibility? Oh yeah, that's a real possibility. How do you know that?
That practice continues even today in the eastern countries.
Okay.
You kill your enemy for perspective.
Boy, that tells us a lot about where Saul is now, doesn't it? See, I don't think Saul ever accepted the fact that he was rejected by God. Okay, he really longed and desired for Jonathan to obtain the kingdom after he died, and yet that wasn't going to happen either, was it? Okay, and so I just find it interesting that Saul's demeanor and Saul's nature, although there were good elements of his nature, there was also some very horrible aspects to his personality, right? And he was kind of one of those men that if anything gets in my way, guess what I'll do? I'll just run over you, right? You know? And he could care less. And even if that meant slaying a prophet of God, slaying one of his best friends, he just didn't care about that. And so Saul is extremely concerned, okay? Now, here's where it gets interesting, doesn't it? What cover did the Lord provide for Samuel? Okay? Sacrifice. Go to Jesse's house, right? Go to Bethlehem and say you're there to what? To offer a sacrifice. Now watch this. And the Lord said, take a heifer with thee, and say, I am come to sacrifice to the Lord. And call Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show thee what thou shalt do. And thou shalt anoint unto me him whom I name unto thee. Does that make you uncomfortable? Carol's shaking her head, yep. That makes me uncomfortable. Okay. Why does it make you uncomfortable? Yeah, I want to, yes, tell us what you really feel, you know.
I'm surprised that the Lord would say, hey, go and tell him this and pretend it's one thing when it really wasn't.
Okay, now did you hear a word? Pretend. Okay, pretend. Keep that word in mind. Okay. Anybody else? Does this make anybody else uncomfortable? Nobody? You don't care? It's a cover story. Yeah, it's a cover. You know, that's for certain. Okay. Let me ask you this. Does it seem somewhat deceptive? Oh. Misleading. Deceptive. God. Now, if that don't make you uncomfortable, something wrong with you. To think that God would deceive somebody, that God would be deceptive in His dealings with another human being. She's struggling, boy. She does. There's one in here struggling. Jenny? Okay? All right, Jane? Yep. But can you imagine? She said, really, it wasn't pretend, because when he got there, he did offer a sacrifice. There was actually a sacrifice that took place, and that was not uncommon in that day for a prophet to go to a city and to make sacrifice. So God was giving him one reason for him to be there, so that if Saul questioned him, he had a reason and didn't have to divulge the rest of the information, right? And wouldn't lie to Saul, okay? But it still causes us to be a little queasy, doesn't it? When you think about what's going on. Let me read you a couple of comments. This is, Barnes says this: "It was not the purpose of God that Samuel should stir up a civil war by setting up David as Saul's rival." Now watch this. "Secrecy, therefore, was a necessary part of the transaction. But secrecy and concealment are not the same as duplicity and falsehood. Concealment of a good purpose for a good purpose is clearly justifiable." Okay? So he says that there are times when it is absolutely essential that you conceal something from someone. Okay? Y'all never done that, have you? "I want to go down here to North Beach restaurant and eat tonight," you tell your husband. "Well, why do you want to go there?" "Well, they got good food down there." He gets down there and you throw him a 90th birthday party. You didn't tell him everything. Did you lie to him? No, we're going down there and eat. We did eat. But there's also what? There was also a party attached to that, and I concealed that because if I did, it'd spoil the whole thing. Right? Now, you can do that, and that's okay for me. But God can't. You see? So there's times when concealment is absolutely essential, isn't it? Okay? All right,
Isn't that the basis of the Catholic doctrine that I don't have to tell you the truth if you don't deserve the truth? I mean, that was a question with John Kennedy, that he didn't have to be honest with Congress or anybody if he felt like they were not worthy of the truth.
Well, their doctrine is they can lie to you, not just withhold truth. They can lie to you and be okay if the purpose is such that it's needful. And Muslim doctrine teaches the same thing. Jim? Okay. Yep. Clark says this: "And though no man in any circumstance should ever lie, yet in all circumstances he is not obliged to tell the whole truth. Though in every circumstance he must tell nothing but the truth, and in every case so tell the truth that the hearer shall not believe a lie by it." Okay? If he was going to go sacrifice and he did sacrifice, then guess what? I didn't lie to you. Okay? I didn't tell you everything I was there for, but I didn't lie to you. Okay? And so there's no falsehood here, even though there is some concealment. Now, if you're going for, I was trying to think of another illustration. If you're going for a specific purpose, okay, and you don't tell the truth to the person when you're asked, okay, I mean, if that's the only purpose you're there for, and somebody asks you, "Why are you here?" and you don't tell them, that'd be a lie, wouldn't it? But if you're there for 2 or 3 or 4 purposes, right, then you could tell them just one purpose and be okay. Okay? We went to my brother's to eat. But guess what else we did? Played games. We watched a ball game together. We shared some presents. Whatever. Okay? But I just told you what? One purpose. Was I just being deceptive and lying to you because I only told you one of my purposes? No. One of our purposes was to go eat. So I'm not a liar in the sense, even though I didn't reveal all the truth to you. Okay? And so I think God understands that, and He gave Saul another purpose so that he did not have to lie and put his life in jeopardy, and even maybe the nation in jeopardy. Okay? We run into some of these little tricky things at times, and they're difficult, aren't they? They kind of put our shake our minds up just a little bit. True or false? Samuel was so scared that he refused to obey God. That's false. Okay, I believe I had the wrong reference there, guys. I think it should have been verse 4 instead of 3. And Samuel did that which the Lord spake and came to Bethlehem. Let me ask you this. Was this still a hard command for Samuel to do, even though he had another purpose? Yeah, folks, the fear, if Saul finds out, is still what? It's still real. It's still there. Even though God gave him another okay, at least I got a little cover, but if he finds out, he can still kill me. What I'm trying to get you to see is, even though when Samuel did what God said, it was still a difficult command to obey. Okay? And we need to keep that in mind. Who trembled when they saw Samuel? Yes. And the elders of the town trembled at his coming. Who are the elders? Okay, the leaders. Okay. Anytime you hear the word elders, what should come to mind? The older men. Okay. These were the older, more experienced men who lived in the city and the region around the city. Okay. These men became the leaders of the city, maybe like a city council, mayor, whatever. And where did they sit? Yeah, they oftentimes sat at the gate. They made themselves easily accessible to the people, and the people could come and present their cases, and those individuals would judge those cases, make decisions, and pass those on to the people. So all of a sudden, they look down the road, and what do they see? Samuel coming. This is the way people feel when I come. Maybe not. Okay, but they trembled. Oh, the prophet's coming. That's what I meant by that. Oh, the preacher's coming. Okay, I see you. You open up your window, you know. Wonder whether you should open it up or not. Why would they tremble at the presence of a prophet? Why? Okay, unworthiness or guilt, he says. Wow. Any other reason? Well, let me ask you this. What question did they ask him? That's the next question. Yeah, are you coming peacefully? Uh-oh, that tells me something. Okay? That tells me that there were times when a prophet went to a city with a purpose in mind for that city that wasn't too hot. Okay? Could the leaders be in sin? Could the people of the city be in sin? Could they need to be rebuked? Could a prophet proclaim punishment and judgment against a city? Yeah. If a prophet all of a sudden just shows up at your city for no reason and you're really not anticipating it, then guess what? You're a little bit concerned. Okay? Let me read you something that Paul wrote to the church at Corinth. It's found in 1 Corinthians 4:21. What will ye? Shall I come unto you with a rod, or in love and in the spirit of meekness? Wow. Even in the first century, a man of God could show up with a rod, not a literal rod. Okay, what does he mean by that? Yeah, punishment, rebuke. Okay, this was a church that was highly divided, wasn't it? And they were accepting a fornicator into their midst. There was all kinds of things that were going on. And Paul says, look guys, I can come one of two ways. I can come with a rod, or I can come with love and meekness. It all depends on what's happening in that congregation. Are there times when a preacher has to stand in the pulpit and take a rod to the congregation? Oh yeah. That's not always a fun thing to do. Okay? Not at all. And so it happened even in the way back there in Bible times. True or false? Saul came to punish the people for their disobedience to God. False. When they ask, are you come peacefully, what did he say? Yeah, peacefully. Everything's okay. I put down here, the work of a prophet does not always involve pleasant things. Sometimes he's called upon to enter into a city as an adversary. Wow. Here Saul had come peacefully, but the work he was required to be done, if Saul found out, was still a scary work, wasn't it? Because there's times when even the easy stuff is not easy. You know what? If you have people in opposition to you, like Saul would be to this man. Who were sanctified to come to the sacrifice? ABC. Number one, the elders. I am come to sacrifice unto the Lord. Sanctify yourselves, he says. And who else? Jesse? Yes. And he sanctified Jesse and his sons and called them to the sacrifice. Clark says this, sanctify means change your clothes, wash your bodies in pure water, prepare your minds by meditation, reflection, and prayer, that being in the spirit of sacrifice, ye may offer acceptably to the Lord. Sanctify yourselves. Folks, you don't need to come in the presence of God with the wrong mindset. You know what? Maybe we should change that. You need to come into the presence of God prepared to do what you're supposed to be doing when you get there. You know that? Sanctify yourselves. Set yourselves apart. When we get up on Sunday morning, guess what? We need to start sanctifying ourselves, don't we? Might be smart to start the night before. Sanctify yourself. Get your mindset ready. Get your bodies ready. Get everything prepared so that when you get there, you can do it acceptably to the Almighty God. When Samuel saw Eliab, what did he think? Ah, yes. And it came to pass when they were come that he looked on Eliab and said, surely the Lord's anointed is before me. Man, what do you think he saw? Yeah. He looked upon this man, pretty good looking guy. May have been a fairly tall man. A lot like Saul, who stood head and shoulders above the people, right? So, here's this first dude out, and man, he's strong, he's big, he's good looking. Oh, that's got to be the Lord's anointed. You see, we sum folks up pretty quickly, don't we? Man is limited as he looks for a leader. He can only see the physical components of a man. The heart is hidden from his view. The inner man can be quite different from the physical man. Can it? You see, that's why there's other qualifications for elders and others. And one of those is what? Having a good report from them that are without. If all I can see are the physical things, and I have no other way of knowing much about you, then I may choose you based solely upon your looks. When it comes to preachers, the way he looks, the way he presents himself, he's got a good personality, he's got a good, oh yes, we need that man. And you get him in here and guess what? He can be corrupt to the core, can he not? Okay, because we just can't read the hearts of men. Very, very difficult for us. What did the Lord tell Samuel not to look upon in the king's selection? Yes, but the Lord said unto Samuel, look not on his countenance, nor on the height of his stature. That lets us know what? He had looked on Eliab's countenance, the way he groomed himself, the way he presented himself, and he looked upon his height. He says, don't look at those things. Because I have what? I have refused him. Wow. True or false? The Lord seeth not as man seeth. True. Absolutely. He doesn't see as we see. Folks, this is a point that all men and women need to remember about God. He does not see as we see. He does not think the way we think. He does not behave the way we behave. Isaiah 55:8 and 9. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. And yet, all of us think that God thinks the way we do. Don't we? That's what we do. All of us think that for some reason. God thinks the way I think. I'm not wrong in the way I think. The way I think's right. And we put God in this little box, and the little box is, guess who? Me. Oftentimes. And it's hard sometimes to step out of the box, isn't it? Very difficult. God knows I love my children. He'd never want me to withdraw from my children. Really? Where'd you get that? Well, I just know God. No, you don't. You know you. And you're casting your thinking on God. You see, this stuff gets tough, guys. You know it? And we have to be very, very careful that we don't try to make God think like we do, because we may be dead wrong. You know it? It's scary.
That was your point this morning. His love is divine love, not human love.
That's right.
He doesn't love like we do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For man looketh on the blank blank, but God looketh on the blank. Outward appearance, God looks on the heart. Folks, one's body can be strong, but he can have a heart of a coward. One can hide among the stuff, looking humble and have the heart of pride. One can be beautiful on the outside and ugly on the inside. One can be clean on the outside and filthy on the inside. Who does that sound like? Sounds like the Pharisees of Jesus' day, doesn't it? The outside was beautiful. The inside stunk like dead men's bones and hypocrisy. Wow. What was the name of the second son who was rejected by God? Yes, Abinadab. Boy, that makes you feel good, doesn't it? What was the name of the third son? Shammah. He was rejected by God. How many sons did God reject? 7. I wrote a lesson down here. The process of finding the right man for a job can be a long and tedious one. One may have to examine numerous candidates before finding the right person for the job. I know of a congregation went about a year and a half before they hired a preacher. You want to know why? We're looking for the right man for the job. See, what happens sometimes is you just rush into getting one, right? And guess what? He may not be the right person for the task. Okay? Notice God